Yo, what up? Welcome to Mo Boxing No Problem. I'm Jose Ramirez Jr. And tonight we got special guests. I'm joined with pro boxer Manuel Tino Avila. How's it going, Tino?
Good, good. How are you? How are you?
Good, man. Thanks for making the time for this interview.
No, thank you for having me.
No problem. So, first question I got for you. It's probably the most basic boxing question. I'm sure you get asked this all the time. But how did you get started in boxing?
I was a troublemaker as a kid. So I played soccer and I was in baseball, and then both of them had like off seasons. So it was like, my dad needed something that was all year round. I was like 9 years old. He's like, "Hey, you want to try boxing?" And I was already getting into fights at the time in school, so like I was already a troublemaker. So I'm like, "Hell yeah, let me pick up some kids for no problem, man." So I didn't join it thinking it was gonna be a sport. I just joined it to thinking I was just gonna beat up on some kids,
Mm-hmm.
and it turned into something freaking, something I turned into some dedication, bro. Like,
Yeah, absolutely. We got a live comment here from Quinton Orozco. It says, Yee, my boy Manny.
oh yeah, my coworker. Shout out to Quentin.
Shout out to Quinton, man. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you. And then, Manny, can you let us know about your amateur career? Did you have like a lot of fights, and what were your accomplishments?
Nah, I wasn't a big amateur. I turned pro after going 48-6. I had a lot of stoppages. I had like almost 30 stoppages or something like that. So I guess it's like high on the amateur side, especially from the weight class I was fighting at. Well, at that time it was like 119. So that's where I ended up leaving at 119 when I was amateur. But I didn't do many tournaments. My very I think my very first tournament I won by knockout. I was like 6 fights, and my coach decided to turn me open at 6 fights instead of 10.
Mm-hmm.
And I beat somebody up that had like 40 something fights.
Wow.
And I was a young kid. I was maybe 12 years old. And then I think shortly after that, I came up to my first loss against Victor Pasillas, and I had like 10 fights, and he already had like 200 fights or something like that. And then it was just crazy because he was my last loss too. It was my first loss and my last loss in amateurs.
Dang,
So
that is crazy.
it's cool. We're cool. He's helped me out a lot with sparring and stuff. So we're cool. No beef or nothing. So
That's what I like about boxing too. When you can just like settle, whatever there is in the ring, and then afterwards you can be cool.
yeah.
Awesome. And then I want to talk about your pro debut. You debuted back in November 18th of 2010 against Alexis Hernandez.
Yeah.
What were your emotions heading into a fight? Any nerves?
Nah, what was crazy is I wasn't even supposed to fight him. I was supposed to fight somebody else, and then it was like a last minute opponent too because they're like, so I show up to Wayne's and everything like, oh no, you're not. You're gonna fight somebody else now. So the dude didn't even show up to the day of the weigh-ins. He showed up the day of the weigh-ins, had to make weight,
Uh-huh.
and I'm like, oh shit. I was like, okay. And like, oh yeah, he has like 10 amateur fights, and I'm like, okay. I'm like, if he's signing the contract, I don't care. He's in it, but
Yeah.
no, I wasn't really nervous, dude. I was a swing bout, so
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, you're going on next, and then like, oh no, this fight went too long, so now you're gonna go after this one, and like, oh no, that fight went too long. So they ended up putting me like after the main event. So they're like, all right, so like just relax. So I knocked out. I was asleep, snoring, I guess. And they're like, everybody's just like, what's wrong with this kid? He's about to fight, and he's like knocked out. I'm like,
As calm as can be.
yeah.
And then I want to talk about your fight with Jojo Diaz back in 2017. That was at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. What can you tell us about that fight?
Um, you know what? It was just a big learning experience. There's a lot of mistakes I made going up to that fight. During the fight, it was just a lot of learning lessons. I wasn't 100% going into the ring, and me knowing that, I asked for a rematch right after the fight, and then they just turned it down right away. So it's a learning lesson. Always got to go into the ring 100%. Uh,
Right.
you know, and knowing way before the fight came on that I wasn't gonna be 100%, I should have just called the fight off. But it happens, learning experience, and sucks that they defined my career by that one loss at the time, and you know, like I said, it's a learning lesson, and gotta just keep moving forward.
Right, you build off that. And your last fight was against Ruben Garcia in Tijuana, Mexico. How would you rate your performance?
I probably give myself like a C. Honestly, I mean, yeah, I went what 3 years, 8 months.
Yeah.
No fights. And I mean, I knew I was gonna have ring rust, but man, I when I got into the ring, I was not expecting the ring rust to hit me that hard. It just sucked because like there was times where I had him hurt, but I didn't have that same like twitch muscles that where I can just go for the kill. It was just I don't know, like what is that? What they call when they play video game, that lag that you got?
Oh
Like I
yeah, the
just
lag.
yeah, I just felt like I had that. I was like, man, and I'm seeing this dude, he's hurt, and I probably could have stopped him like 3 or 4 times, and I'm like, man, I'm just looking at him, and I'm just thinking to myself, like, what the fuck, you know?
Yeah, like you mentioned, it was with the 3 years and 8 months since your last fight before that one, and I'm sure that COVID had a factor in some of that layoff. But what were some of the other reasons for being out of the ring so long?
Uh, I mean, mainly COVID. So I was supposed to fight Diego De La Hoya March 2020. And that was like the beginning of COVID. So
Hmm.
originally they're like, you're still fighting, and then like, then all of a sudden like, oh, the next day, no, Fantasy Spring shut down, so you're not fighting. And then, I mean, I got screwed over by Golden Boy because I mean I was ready to fight, and they're like, oh, you're gonna fight Diego De La Hoya, and then they're like, oh, I'm like, all right, I'll fight, and then they sent the contract, I signed the contract, and they're like, oh, he's not ready, and then they sent the contract again, and they're like, oh, he can't make weight. And I'm like, I'll like I'm signing contract. I'll fight anybody. Like, let me just get a fight. Oh no, we only want you to fight Diego. So I'm like, all right. And then my contract ended, and then just trying to get that fight again. With COVID, not everybody was fighting, and then so I had to, work extra jobs just to, make ends meet because I wasn't
Hmm.
making anything, not fighting. I don't get paid
Right.
to train. Like even I've never my whole career I never got paid to train. I've always had to work 2-3 jobs, and then once COVID happened, I had to get 2-3 jobs again, and then at that point uh I was just sleeping like an hour a day. So I was like, man, called up my coach. I'm like, man, I'm working too much. I'm sleeping an hour a day just so I can train. I haven't
Hmm.
fought in so long. I'm like, oh, you know what? Let's just call it.
Yeah.
And then I did that for like 6 months, and I called my coach. I'm like, you know what? I don't want to be retired. Let's come back. And I gained a lot of weight. He goes, hey, what are you weighing? I'm like, I'm like 160.
Uh-huh.
He's like, oh, shit. He goes, you're not coming into the gym until you're at least 135. So I think it took me like 2 months to drop all that weight, got down to 135, and then we started working again.
Man, that's impressive. And man, thanks for sharing that Golden Boy story. You don't really hear about kind of what happens behind the scenes, and sometimes it's out of your hands whether you can fight or not.
Yeah, I mean, being from Northern California, bro. I mean, and they've gave me opportunities to move to Southern California, train with all these other guys, mainly Robert Garcia. They wanted me to go with Robert Garcia, and I think because I turned down those opportunities, I think they kind of took it against me. And I had mentioned before, I was like, man, I'm from Northern California. I'm the only one from Northern California that's doing this. Like, I want to, represent Northern California. I want to be the difference. I want to kind of even out the playing field, and they didn't see that as an opportunity to build California. They just seen it, me versus Southern California pretty much, and it backfired on me, and I mean, I don't regret it, but moving forward, and now I'm still doing the same thing, representing Northern California, and hopefully I can do things differently this time.
Yeah, NorCal's on the up and up, making a lot of noise. We got Joe Sean James, Kane Sandoval, Charlie Sheehy, yourself. So
Yeah.
Andy Benson. So lots of great names out there. Comment here from Bruce Gas, Boxing Jazz and More. Says salute brother at Mo Boxing No Problems. Salute Bruce and Gas. And then, Tino, I want to talk about your upcoming fight. So you'll be back in the ring on April 7th at the Paco Presents card here in Brooks, California. What can you tell us about your training camp for that fight, and what can fans expect to see from you on April 7th?
I mean, just a great show, man. I mean, I've known Albert Torres for pretty much my whole pro career. I've used him for sparring, and he's used me for sparring for multiple fights. So we've known each other for a long time. When they offered me the fight, I mean, I'm cool with them. It's just business, man. It's like, it's nothing personal. It's just business. And I mean, he's a really good fighter, tough opponent, and he's not a dirty fighter either. So I mean, I know it's gonna be a good fight, and it's gonna be a good action packed fight. Where everybody's gonna be excited to see.
Nice. Yeah, that's one thing about the Paco. You put some pretty competitive fights.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
that's gonna be good. And obviously not overlooking Alberto Torres, but do you have a dream opponent in mind for the future that you want to share the ring with?
You know what? Just getting back into the ring. I'm focusing on Albert. And then we're moving forward because this fight I'm fighting at 126, and then our goal is to move back down to 122.
Nice. Yep. And then, as I mentioned before we got in the interview, I currently live in Fairfield, been living out here for 6 years, and I saw in a lot of your early careers there was fights going on in Fairfield and even in Vacaville. How was it like fighting in this area?
It was cool because I mean, like how many fighters can say not fighting for a world title, not having an Olympic background, not having a big following or whatever. And then I mean I had a big following in Fairfield,
Mm-hmm.
but to the point where we're almost shutting down fights because we're selling so many tickets. But like I had you know uh less than I had less than 20 fights. It was like my third fight, my fourth fight, and it was a bunch of fights we were doing, and we even did them in Woodland. And all of them were like televised too. I think we're like one or two weren't.
Nice.
So it's like to get that privilege to fight in my own hometown. Literally, like at the time, it was like a walking distance from my house, like almost. So
Nice.
it was like across the street where I went to school too. So it was cool, like. So I'm like, man, I grew up here, and everybody was showing up. It was to the point where I was selling thousands of dollars worth of tickets, man, and people were like still trying to buy. And then it was crazy, but it was a cool experience. It was fun. And I had talked to Baco. I was like, hey, well, how about let's try to bring it back to Fairfield? I don't have that big of a following. He was like, you know what? He goes, that venue was a pain in the ass. He goes, because we sell so many tickets. I'm like, all right. I'm like, I tried.
Appreciate you bringing back to Tino because I was like, man, I'd love to see that again here in Fairfield.
Yeah.
Little 5 minute drive, a ton of fight. Calling here from Jay Reddy says good stuff, Jose. Thanks, Jay Reddy, for tuning in. And then speaking of distance, Tino, what's the furthest you've had to travel to get good sparring?
Um. Well, I mean, so for a while I lived in Salinas. So I mean, we're traveling to Hollister and like Watsonville and all that stuff. I mean, I know Salinas was closer, but I guess I mean that's the furthest I was going for training at the time. I mean, other than that, when I was in Fairfield, I was training in Sacramento to get sparring, like with Albert Torres and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
We'd go to Stockton to spar Manuel Jaime, where I believe he's fighting too, April 7th. And so I mean and my what was that Geo out of Stockton too. I sparred him. We've gone to Stockton. So I mean, it wasn't far driving. It's just sometimes hitting traffic, which
Yeah,
that's about it.
yeah. Especially sometimes you get that barrier traffic.
Yeah, I mean, just California traffic, I guess, because no matter where you go,
That's true. That's true. Fair point. And then, Tino, how do you prepare for fights? Do you watch a lot of tape on your opponents, or you kind of leave that up to your coach and just focus on you?
I mean, for every opponent, we prepare differently. I mean, I don't watch footage on any opponent. Um, I do watch footage after I fight them, and then just to see. And I swear, like 95 or more % of the time, they fight me differently than they fight in their previous fights. So it's
Mm,
like, what good would have the footage done for me anyways?
right.
Because I mean, even like JoJo Diaz, look at his fight, all his fights before me, and then look at how he fought me. Completely different fighter, So it's like, what good would have me looking at those footages done for me when he fought me differently? He fought me preparing for me, So he was trying to
Hmm.
go off of me. So it's like, everybody has a game plan, but it's like when it's a different fight than you're watching, how you gonna prepare for that? So it's like,
That's
yeah,
a
you
good
just
point.
you kind of just stick to a game plan, and you got to have more than one. So and obviously, I had gassed out for personal reasons after like 5 or 6 rounds. So
But yeah, you can make a good point. You just gotta make the judgments on fight night.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And then Tino, who's been the hardest puncher you've been in the ring with, either in sparring or in a pro fight?
So sparring, and he was my pad man for years, and my sparring partner for years too. Felipe Vergara. He has a brother that's a pro, Ivan Vergara. But Felipe Vergara is the hardest puncher I've ever faced, fighting, sparring, and I've even sparred like Nonito Donaire and Robert Guerrero. It's like, and this guy is the hardest puncher I've ever gone up against, to the point where, my coach would be like, "All right, you're sparring Felipe," and I'm like, "Ah, fuck," like, all right. And I mean, I would block punches, and I'm still feeling them through the gloves, man. And I'm like, damn, like there's no stopping this guy, like, and and he was inside fighter because he had he didn't have good vision, so he was inside fighter. So there was like no real getting away from him. I was like, oh, I had to pretty much run just to get some breaks, man. But yeah, yeah, Felipe Vergara was the hardest puncher I've ever been up against.
Yeah, man, quite the the compliment there when you fought as like some other heavy-handed fighters.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And then who was your favorite boxer growing up?
Roy Jones Jr.
Roy Jones. Yep, that's a good
Yeah, I
name.
mean he's pretty much the reason where, because I mean when I played baseball, when I played soccer, I didn't really want to like watch it. I just wanted to play it. I just just play the sport. And he's the reason why my dad's like, oh, you got to get into boxing and this and that. And I was like, no, I don't. I'm all right. And then I seen some of his fights, and I'm like, oh damn, like I want to watch this guy fight. So he's the reason why I got into watching boxing. You know.
Yep, yep. And then bringing it to present day, who do you consider to be the number one pound for pound fighter today?
Uh, yeah, I'll say Tank Davis. I mean, I know a lot of people will say Canelo, but Tank Davis is actually hunting for the top guys. He went from 130 pounds to 140 to fight with a Mario Barros
Mm-hmm. Yep.
just to prove a point that he's not fighting, guys that can't punch or guys that can't fight. Beating him and then and then he's like, all right, I'm gonna fight at 135, beating all these other guys. And it's not like, oh, he's barely sliding. No, he's knocking these dudes out or winning, by big decisions. So it's like, I mean, yeah, and yeah, like I said, he's hunting for these top guys. Like I said, like unlike Canelo, I mean, I know a lot of people are big Canelo fans, but it's like, uh, he's more sticking to like the Mayweather game plan. Like, yeah, he will fight the top fighters, but like on his terms, when he feels like it. And it's like I think I've seen an interview where he's like, oh, I'm not gonna fight Benavidez right now. I'm looking for the rematch with Bivol. And it's like, is the rematch really necessary? Like, how many people
Yeah.
want to watch the Bivol rematch compared to Benavidez? It's like, and Tank, he's like, everybody want to see the Tank Garcia fight. So he made it. I mean, obviously he
Mhm.
made it. Him being A side, and with his everything that he said, it pretty much went, and Ryan had to agree to it. But that's what happens when you're the A side. You deserve your spot. You worked hard for that, and so you get to make all the decisions you want, and they either say yes or no and make the fight happen.
Agreed. And that segues to our next section. It's kind of called the fans corner. So I'm going to ask you about some fights, either confirmed or rumor, and you let me know who you think's going to win. And the first one I want to ask you about, perfect segue because we're just talking about, Benavidez Canelo. So we saw what David Benavidez did to Caleb Plant. If we do end up getting Canelo versus Benavidez, how do you see that fight playing out?
I mean, I just think Canelo has a little too much defensive skills, and Benavidez might end up a little more frustrated than he did with Plant. I mean, so I mean, I'd see that as a Canelo uh, decision.
All right. Next one I want to ask you about Tank Davis versus Ryan Garcia. How do you see that one playing out?
I mean, I got that by knockout, Tank Davis. I actually bet my cousin, so yeah. So we both got Tank Davis by knockout. So I think it's a 10 round fight. So it's like if he gets knocked out in the first 5 rounds, my cousin wins the bet. If he gets knocked down in the last 5 rounds, I win the bet. So I'm like,
So you're hoping for a late stoppage.
yeah, I think he's gonna get stopped like 6 or 7 rounds.
All right. And then the next one I want to ask you about is Devin Haney versus Vasily Lomachenko.
That's a tough one. David Haney, he's a good fighter. Lemonchenko, he's a really good fighter. But it's like, is the age gonna affect Lomachenko? Is being not as active as he was before? And then David Haney, I mean, I don't really see him having the chin as most of these fighters have, and so it's like, it's. I mean, it'll be a good fight, but I think I'll lean more towards Lomachenko.
All right. And the final fight I want to ask you about, this one is rumored. It'll be an all Mexican affair. Who will win out of Mauricio Broncolara versus Ray Vargas?
Uh, Mauricio, I think would get that victory, bro. I've watched Ray Vargas for a long time because he was in my weight class for a while. When I was active, so I watched him for a while, and then I fought on his undercard once. My last fight before February, which 2019, and I had felt he lost that fight. I can't remember who he fought. Some like Japanese guy, and I had felt he lost that fight, but they gave him the decision. He was a world champion, and he wasn't really impressing me.
All right. So coming back to you, Tino, what are some things you like to do outside of boxing? Some of your interests and hobbies?
Pretty much hang out with the family when I have time. You know, um, you know, yeah, pretty much just hang out with the family. I mean, I try to work on cars and stuff every here and there, but I always spend the time with the kids and stuff, or sleep. I sleep a lot.
Yeah, you need both family time and sleep time.
Yeah.
And then, what's the best piece of advice you would give someone that wants to make a career out of boxing and go pro?
Um, so don't rush it, man. I mean, I wish I could have rushed it a little bit more, but I mean, I'm seeing guys. I have a friend that he has, I think, 3 or 4 fights as a pro, and he's signing contracts after contract after contract. He signed 2 contracts in a row. 1 month after the next. And I'm like, bro, you gotta chill and relax. Like I get like you want to get these fights, but you can't just rush it. And he goes, man, I can't turn down these fights. Like, oh yeah, you can. I'm like, you're not with no promoter. You're not signed. You don't have to sign this contract. Like, you're the B side, bro. Like you gotta work your way up.
Mhm.
So I mean, just don't rush it. Don't freaking gain all the weight. Pigging out after a fight. Just enjoy the time. And I mean, I say give yourself a little bit less than a week after a fight to relax and then get back in the gym right away.
Great advice. And then, final question, not really a question, more so opening up the floor. What's the message you want to send to your fans and supporters watching the interview?
I mean, thank you for the continuous support. Thank you for everybody that still showing love, and that's excited for me to be back in the ring. And I mean, when I announced that I was retired, people were like, "Man, thank you for all the great fights and stuff." And then, obviously people were a little upset about it. And then when I announced that I was back, a lot of people were even more excited than than I for my retirement. I had people complain about my retirement, but it's like you got to do what you got to do. But yeah, man, people were, I mean, I know my following's not the same, and I'm not, nearly as famous as I used to be, but thank you for all the people that are, continuing to support me, and that are buying my tickets to my fights, and even people that went to Tijuana to see me fight, for my comeback fight. So man, appreciate everybody, supporting me and showing me by messages and continue to love.
Yeah, those are the real ones. The ones who went all the way to Tijuana.
Yeah.
Just to see a fight, man. And if you're new and don't follow Tino Avila, make sure to give him a follow on Instagram. It's at Team Tino92. Is here in the banner that's scrolling. And Tino, wish you the best of luck April 7th. Excited to kind of see you put your skills back in the ring.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, you have a good evening, Tino. Thank you so much for your time.
All right, you too.
All right. Take care. Bye.